Correlation between the practice of liberation and the practice of heedfulness. The spiritual practice for liberation supports the practice of heedfulness by promoting purity of action. Liberated persons act with a pure heart, not driven by defilement. The practice for liberation also fosters a sense of joy in a person's activities. It releases people from the stress, agitation and worry that results from actions stemming from unwholesome mind states. For example, action done out of fear or competitiveness. Instead, people act with serenity and joy. In addition, when people see the value of deliverance and mental well-being, they perform external activities to promote a just and peaceful life. In brief, material progress goes hand in hand with spiritual development. Heedfulness similarly complements the practice of liberation. Generally, when people are at ease, they become heedless. By becoming idle and slack in their effort, people who profit materially or who solve external problems are not the only ones who become careless when they are prosperous and comfortable. Those who have reconciled themselves to impermanence, dukkha and non-self, whose hearts are at ease, also tend to become attached to happiness and cease making effort. They no longer attend to unresolved matters and do not urge themselves to improve either personal or social circumstances. The active value of the three characteristics based on heedfulness prevents this stagnation and motivates these individuals to persevere. In short, these two practices must be united for Dhamma practice to be correct. Spiritual progress then inspires virtuous and joyful action, while people's deeds nurture further spiritual development. Proper practice is free from acting with a troubled mind and free from complacency. People act with ease, and this ease does not become an obstacle for subsequent effort. As a result, spiritual realization safeguards action, and action enhances spiritual realization. In unison, perfection is reached. Spiritual qualities and active, heedful qualities both depend on wisdom, which discerns the three characteristics, leads to non-attachment, surrender, relinquishment, and liberation. The deeper the understanding, the greater is the freedom, and higher the realization. For example, by accessing jhana or gaining an insight, a person is able to perceive the impermanence, dukkha, and non-self in the bliss of these conditions, and they neither cling to the bliss nor to the attainments. In practical affairs, wisdom rouses people to act with diligence and to make the most of each opportunity. An understanding of the law of causality prompts a person to investigate causes, to solve problems at their root, and to act in harmony with this law. This knowledge includes analyzing causes of past events so that one learns from them, and recognizing the necessary conditions for preventing harm and promoting well-being. The two ways of practice reveal the supreme importance of the teaching on the three characteristics. The first way of practice highlights wisdom, which penetrates reality by comprehending the three characteristics. The second way of practice points to diligent action, which springs from an understanding of the three characteristics. Wisdom's task is to realize the truth of the three characteristics. With this realization, the heart is freed. At the same time, the three characteristics motivate a person who has some level of insight to take heed, to make further effort, and to avoid transgression. An understanding of the three characteristics is the source of just action, from beginning stages of Dhamma practice to the end. Awareness of the three characteristics is the motivation for heedfulness, ingenuity, abstention from evil, and good conduct on all levels. Ultimately, a complete understanding of the three characteristics enables perfect mental freedom, which is the highest human achievement. The worldly and the transcendent converge at the three characteristics. Liberation of the heart is a transcendent quality. Heedfulness is mundane. The mutually supportive nature of these two principles demonstrates that an honourable life, the worldly and the transcendent, abide in unison. One sees the evidence of this clearly in the Buddha and the Arahants. Perfectly free, they represent the human ideal, and they attain this freedom by way of heedfulness. Arahants alone are described as those who have perfected heedfulness. They are persons who have finished their business by way of careful attention. Having attained arahantship, they continue to preserve, for the welfare of the monastic community, Sangha, and of all beings. One should follow the example of these awakened ones by realizing mental freedom and acting with care. The values disclosed by the three characteristics ensure perfect moral conduct with definite consequences. There are two things which guarantee infallible moral conduct. 1. A mind free from longing, which does not experience clinging, craving, lust for material objects or preserved thoughts, because one has reached deliverance. There is freedom from defilement. There is an end to selfishness. 2. Sublime happiness, which is independent of materiality and is accessible without moral infringement. Indeed, the first quality is enough to guarantee moral impeccability. The second is merely additional confirmation. Liberation grants these two moral guarantees: a thorough understanding of the world and an insight into the three characteristics leads to freedom of the heart. Coveting and loathing, both grounds for wrongdoing, cease. In other words, moral conduct arises automatically, since no impulse exists to act immorally. Furthermore, liberation generates a profound happiness. Awakened beings experience expansiveness and joy, and some of them experience exalted states of bliss in jhana. Experiencing such bliss, it is natural that they are of no mind to act dishonourably for another sort of happiness. In any case, one must understand that the second guarantee of refined happiness alone is not yet fully dependable, if it is a mundane form of happiness. For example, that of jhana, since a person who accesses these mundane states can still revert to indulgence in gross forms of happiness. To be truly secure, a person must obtain the first guarantee of non-craving. Otherwise, the happiness must be transcendent, which automatically arises with the first guarantee. Stream enterers, Sotapanna, possesses these two moral guarantees. They are impeccable in moral conduct and are incapable of moral transgression. The scriptures refer to enlightened beings Aryapagala from stream enterers upwards as perfect in moral conduct. Therefore, if we wish for ethical standards to be firmly established in society, we must promote the realization of stream entry. We will thereby meet with true success. If one is unable to establish these two guarantees, one's chances for a secure ethical society will be slim, because members of society will be infected by defilement and thus be predisposed to violate boundaries. In this event, systems of control and coercion need to be created, or even excessive force be applied, which does not offer true safety or resolution. We see the lack of success of such measures everywhere. For example, people in this day and age receive advanced education and have learned what is good and bad, what is beneficial and harmful. But because they fall prey to greed, lobha, hatred, dosa, and delusion, moha, they act immorally. They injure themselves, for example, by intoxication and drug abuse, and damage society, for example, by corruption, exploitation, and deforestation. Reasoned arguments and law enforcement end up having minimal effect and sometimes even appear farcical. When people are unable to establish the two aforementioned guarantees, they generally use the following methods to protect or promote ethical standards, with varying degrees of success. Intimidation by establishing rules, laws, and punishments. Due to evasion of these laws, new systems must be created for reinforcement. In addition, the system itself may be flawed, for example with corruption. As a result, the attempts to maintain ethical standards meet with ever-diminishing success. Intimidation with threats of occult power, for example gods and supernatural forces. This is successful during times when people believe in these forces, but is less effective when people have the sort of scientific understanding present today. This form of intimidation includes instilling the fear of going to hell. Intimidation with threats against a person's honor and popularity, for example applying social pressure of blame and disrepute. This works for some but not for others, and is indecisive at best. This will drive some people, for example, to act in secret. Catering to desire by using a reward or compensation, either from people, gods, or occult powers, including the promise of heaven. This method is variously effective according to time and place, and its results are uncertain. An appeal to virtue and righteousness by encouraging a sense of shame, self-respect, and mindfulness. Few people possess these qualities in strength. People usually submit to desire, and therefore their moral conduct is inconsistent. The protection bestowed by this motivation is especially weak in an age abounding in temptation and base values. An appeal to faith by fixing the mind with strong conviction on an ideal. This is difficult to accomplish, and even when successful, it is unreliable, because faith is dependent on something external. Faith is not direct knowledge, and sole reliance on faith is still tainted by defilement. Occasionally this defilement intensifies, and then it enshrouds faith, or faith wanes and disappears on its own.
This method includes the concentrative power in preliminary stages of mind deliverance, Ceto Vimutti. Applying the power of enthusiasm, Chanda, by encouraging an interest in the development of virtue. This force is the adversary of craving, which is the agent behind immoral behavior. If one cannot yet cultivate the heart's liberation, one should emphasize the rousing of such enthusiasm, as it is a wholesome force, is conjoined with wisdom, and supports liberation more directly than any of the other methods mentioned above. Regardless of which impetus or motivation one uses, Dhamma practice must rely on self-restraint, Sat-nama, to achieve moral rectitude. Therefore, to foster ethical conduct, people should be trained in strict self-discipline. Of all the motivations listed above, the summoning of virtuous qualities, faith and enthusiasm are best, but one must remember that these forces are unable to provide definite results. A truly stable ethical society only exists when people establish the two moral guarantees, a free heart and sublime happiness, which generate moral integrity automatically. One can use heedfulness as a measuring stick for Dhamma practice by comparing oneself to the Arahants, who combine consummate liberation with perfect diligence. They integrate knowledge of the truth with pure conduct, non-attachment with earnest effort, and transcendent realization with responsible action in the world. They reveal how two apparently discordant elements can exist in harmony and be mutually supportive. Heedfulness is the core of all righteous conduct and is the incentive behind all virtuous acts, from beginning to end. As the Buddha said, heedfulness is like an elephant's footprint, which covers the footprints of all other animals. It dictates the function of all other virtues. All virtues depend on heedfulness, regardless of all the virtues described in the scriptures. Carelessness alone suppresses and invalidates them as if they did not exist. Virtues are truly effective when heedfulness is established. For ordinary people, however, diligence tends to be weakened or interrupted due to their preoccupation with alluring sense objects. Craving causes laziness, worry and procrastination. People's conduct is thus continually wanting or fruitless. Conversely, the greater the heart's liberation, the less a person indulges in delusory sense objects, and the more assiduous that person is, unimpaired by defilement. Freedom and earnest effort support one another in this way. In addition, the principle of heedfulness is a reminder that all persons, including noble ones, Arya, in initial stages of awakening, are still vulnerable as long as they have not realized arahantship. They may become heedless by grasping the ease and contentment stemming from their attainments. Their virtues induce them to err. Therefore, we must constantly remind ourselves to take care and to promote a sense of urgency, samvega. In any community, there are people who succumb to heedlessness. Offering friendship and encouraging others to be prudent is one duty of a diligent person. The presence of a beautiful friend, Kalyanamita, is a key factor which is paired with caution as an antidote when all other virtues are defunct during a period of foolhardiness. And as an answer to the question, having been careless, what are the alternatives to simply waiting to incur the painful consequences? To sum up, people should take care and make earnest effort for their own and others' benefit and development. For example, leaders of a country should make effort to establish peace and welfare, promote a healthy, just environment, and nurture people's spiritual qualities. Religious elders should propagate the Dhamma for the welfare of the many, act in consideration of later generations, and do everything in their ability to preserve the true teaching, Sadhamma, for all beings everywhere. Monks should perform their duties and inspire people with care. They should create a feeling of peace and safety by not undertaking practices of self-mortification and by teaching the way to a virtuous life. All persons should strive for personal well-being by developing self-reliance, and for others' well-being by helping them gain self-reliance. One should cultivate wisdom to reach the highest boon, which leads to deliverance and a life of integrity. Because human beings who are momentarily untroubled live in comfort, or have reconciled themselves to an aspect of the truth, ordinarily become careless. Skilled teachers customarily offer friendly admonishment. They constantly seek means to encourage their followers by advising, inspiring, and even frustrating to establish people in heedfulness.